continue our series this week on the Cleveland Browns and the 5 most important players as far as the Cleveland Browns' overall success in 2023. We got to Dalvin Tomlinson yesterday. Today, number 4 on your list. We will get to that. We will break down the positional group and try to see if we can fill out that room. Jeff Lloyd, joined by Pete Smith, on your latest Locked on Browns.
You are Locked on Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound LGB on ELOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Your host, Jeff Lloyd. Look, I've been here for 7 years. I ain't going anywhere anytime soon, and probably know enough to know I have seen too much Cleveland Browns football over those 7 years. Joined today, Pete Smith, Browns Digest, Sports Illustrated. Obviously, the site over there does fantastic work. Tons of traffic week in, week out. Make sure you are checking that out. Today, as you know, we started and stated yesterday, we're going to do this week a series featuring one player per week, which will lead in obviously, some other segments from there. But the 5 most integral Cleveland Browns to success here in 2023. Without giving it away too quickly, segment 3, Cedric Tillman appears to be a roster lock. But what's the rest of that room? Amari Cooper, your number 4 player here. So some questions we have, Elijah Moore, Donovan Peoples-Jones. How does that work for Amari Cooper? But first and foremost, Pete Smith, Amari Cooper, and there's several ways to look at this. It was understandable, the way it worked with Jacoby Brissett. Amari Cooper is a pro's pro. He's been everywhere in the NFL, whether it was with the Raiders, whether it was the Cowboys, and now his time here with the Cleveland Browns. He's always had a reputation of being a successful guy, a great route runner. Those guys, it doesn't necessarily, you don't need to have the marriage between wide receiver and quarterback. If you run the routes, your timing is right, you're where you're supposed to be, most of the times you will find success. And so it wasn't a surprise. And then when Deshaun Watson got integrated back into the offense, it was a slower start. Obviously, there were some games where Mother Nature was a major factor. There was the second half in Washington where Amari Cooper and Deshaun Watson just lit up a Washington Commanders secondary. But for Cooper here, the fact, and I think everybody is satisfied with what Amari Cooper did in 2022. But Pete, you have to feel, and this should be everybody's thing. I remember something years ago. It was Jake Reed talking in the offseason with Chris Carter, and talking about what he thought his output could be that season. And I think 40, 500. And Chris Carter's like, man, we just got Warren Moon. Bro, you better up what you think, your impact can be. So as far and as satisfied as everybody was with Amari Cooper, the thought process here is, he's going to be healthier because he went through some off-season work. Certainly was down working out a little bit in Puerto Rico. And hey, I don't blame nobody, man. The sand gets hot. I don't want that stuff on my toes either. You got to wear socks, long pants, whatever. Do what you got to do. But the thought process here is, Pete, is you're now putting Amari Cooper with a quarterback on an upper level where Amari Cooper is as a route runner. So I got to think, the production should be even better in 2023 when you're getting 17 games with Deshaun Watson.
It certainly has the potential to be. I mean, there's one of 2 ways to go about it. Either he basically stays consistent to what he did last year, which is 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns, which all of us would sign up for right now and say,
for a 5th round pick. Yeah, I think we're good.
But the other possibility is that they just grow the pie, have more production overall, but Cooper stays where he's at. So either he gets more productive and even better with Watson, or they just grow the pie. He stays the same and other guys play better. But look, Amari Cooper, 215 pounds or so. He's got speed. He's got strength. He's got route running ability. He's a problem. And I think the Commanders game was the best example of just how much he can do, because he catches the ball and guys just couldn't tackle him at that point.
Yep.
And the Browns are a power offense. Even if they have 4 wide this year, they're going to still be a power offense since most of those guys are over 210 pounds. So look, I mean, Amari Cooper he set the table last year for everybody else. Donovan Peoples-Jones the year before, when you had the issues with Landry and other guys being hurt, DPJ was not ready for that life against like JC Jackson and Marlon Humphrey and some of these other guys. So getting Cooper, he set the table. He became that true number one, which allowed David Njoku to be second option more or less. And then DPJ slid into a good spot for him last year, which is that number 3 role. I think that is why Cooper is so important. Is he's still a credible top weapon, but if somebody can surpass him, that probably means you're doing really well for yourself. So Cooper is super important to this team, to the success of this team. Staying healthy for him and playing well throughout the season will be critical for the Browns to be a threat in the postseason.
And the thing with Cooper, Pete, and a lot of the success we saw, a lot of it was, the longer developing crossing routes, which is an advantage you have when you have the offensive line that Cleveland Browns do. But there were some of those, where he was maybe open earlier. Brissett, obviously, the one thing about Jacoby Brissett, and the play was fantastic. It really, truly was. But he just, a bigger guy, mechanic wise, a little bit slower. That's fine if you're a starting pitcher, but a guy in 2023, the quarterback position is all about natural athleticism and finding your guy and getting the ball as quickly as possible. So you have to think that there is an uptick here and an opportunity. But with that being said, obviously, defensive mind, what are you going to say? We got to take away Nick Chubb. We got to take away Amari Cooper. Everybody else on this offense are going to be the guys to beat us. That's just the way it's going to go. But that's always been the case essentially for Amari Cooper. It's not like he's ever been the guy where, he was, not viewed in that regard. Now with more options around him, and we're certainly going to get to this in segment 2, because it's going to make for an interesting dynamic for how the wide receiver production breaks between them all. And I do agree with Pete that we are going to talk about exponentially higher numbers through the passing game in 2023 than we certainly did in 2022. But Pete, the key is, and I think the biggest thing for Amari Cooper is the wide receiver position. It is a very difficult position. There is no way around it. But if you have that one calling card, and which is the most simplistic part of the entire position, is footwork, depth, stem, all of those things, and parlaying it into running the best routes you can. And I'm not confusing this with, everybody gets so excited about the ankle breaker and the wow and this, that. Yeah, but if you took an extra step, you maybe threw off your quarterback's timing. If you shorted the route, you screwed your quarterback another different way. Amari Cooper, it's just simple. It's Novocaine. Every route, when he runs it, it's exactly the same. He will run, his deep crosser the same. He will run his slants the same way. He will run his outs the same way. And as talented as he is, he essentially becomes a quarterback's best friend in that respect, just because he does it the way it's supposed to be done.
Sure. I mean, look, the reason you get an Amari Cooper on your team and why he's a true number one is because he can make big plays, but he can also make the drive extending plays. He's going to get you that first down. He's going to keep the drive alive and make those key plays. He's made big plays in tight coverage. He's done all various things in his 1 year with the Browns that suggest that he can be a reliable target for Deshaun Watson and just make everybody better. Or the contrast to that is, if the Browns have so many weapons on their offense that they can't double him or they can't pay him extra attention, then he's going to be even more successful. So just by the amount of effort the Browns have been putting into trying to acquire more weapons, more receiving threats, to put not only just to put Deshaun Watson in the best position possible, but to make each other better. You add the Elijah Moores and Cedric Tillmans because you want to keep giving yourself options beyond just depth. In case of injury, you want to be able to mix up your lineups. You want to be able to find the right ways to put bigs on smalls and win those matchups to create problems and put stress on the defense. And Amari Cooper offers you a lot of ways to do that, which is why it's difficult to ever really take him off the field because he can beat you in so many ways. And you saw Dallas without him. The Cowboys traded him for a 5th-round pick, and obviously some other things happened, but they instantly missed him. And I think the Browns benefit immensely from that, regardless if he's the top number 1 guy or if they stumble into somebody else who can do it.
Well, and the awkward thing for the Cowboys is they went to a little bit more of a, almost a running back centric team. CeeDee Lamb still got his, but there was no more Amari Cooper, so it ended up being the growth of a player like Tony Pollard. We're going to continue here because with Amari Cooper being here, and I do like the way Pete phrased it is because, the standard and the expectations need to rise here. But how much? Because, you have two, have one firmly established guy here with this team and one who should be able to bring a lot to the fold. Jeff Lloyd, Pete Smith, your latest Locked On Browns. Make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs because right now, new customers can get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. Look, FanDuel, the site gives you great promotions every day. It's simple to navigate. It's safe. It's secure. You get paid instantly. Same game parlays. Look, you got the Eastern Conference Finals, Western Conference Finals. Fine. 2-3 bets that you like. Even if you like long shot bets, only put down a couple of bucks, a chance to watch the game and maybe get yourself a little something in your pocket. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Jeff Lloyd, Pete Smith, we are continuing here with the series this week, giving you the 5 most important Cleveland Browns to overall success here in the 2023 season. As everybody remembers, the everydayers make Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. They heard all about Dalvin Tomlinson yesterday. Today, you were hearing about how number 4 on this list is Amari Cooper. Now, Pete, when you and I first started talking about this over the weekend, setting this up here, now, look, Donovan Peoples-Jones, I don't think the growth is going away. The question will be, does Donovan Peoples-Jones get rewarded with a contract extension this season, or is Donovan Peoples-Jones playing for a contract beyond? Either way, here's a player now that is really, really starting to become comfortable in his own skin. Elijah Moore comes here definitely with a chip on his shoulder, some aggravation over what went on in 2 years with the New York Jets. Times of having success, times of not being a part of anything. You and I have talked about it. Jake Burns has put up film of it. There's times where Elijah Moore is doing everything absolutely right, and no way, no how is the ball coming anywhere near him. Now you put him in a situation where he's playing with with Deshaun Watson. There are so many gimme layup opportunities on what you can do with Elijah Moore. And I'm talking just straight up stop patterns. Turn, face the quarterback. The DB on you gave you depth. And we're talking 5-6 yards minimum. And let's go at it again. This is interesting because you can see the future of you can see the present of this wide receiver room, but you can also see the future of this room. And Elijah Moore and Pete, look, you and I, we were high. We really, really were high on Elijah Moore. And it was just something about going against the big guys, the good guys, the guys you knew were going to be first-round picks, and saying, I don't care. I'm going to go get mine. Elijah Moore here, this could be really, really something because you figure Amari, we figure what? Somewhere around 90. Then you figure between Donovan and Elijah Moore reception-wise, that should hopefully clear 100. But as good as Amari is, there are these two guys, if Moore gets the opportunity that he's been waiting for, and Donovan, you monitor the growth path he's been on, it makes for one hell of a top 3.
Well, I mean, it just comes down to options. Donovan Peoples-Jones is a big target. I mean, he's not. That's another one. He's a 4.4 guy, and yet he will be called slow. He's a big target who makes contested catches, and every year he's gotten better. So maybe he's done growing, but I'm of
best
the
wide
mind,
receiver they drafted, and he was in the 6th round.
I'm of the mind that I'm sort of waiting to see what he's added to his game this year. But the combination of having DPJ and then Moore is that if you play them on the field at the same time, they do completely different things. But if you sort of play them in tandem, because Moore is going to play some Z at points, they are very different players. DPJ is a power receiver who can, has explosion.
Go to the Ravens game. Out of the backfield, catches the ball, beats Roquan Smith, touchdown.
And then Elijah Moore is, a burner. He's smaller, very strong. I mean, short, not small, I should say. Smaller catch radius.
A little bit of a Steve Smith Sr. type of syndrome to him.
Electric with the ball in his hands. So, it's a way that you can poke and prod on defenses and find where they're weak at. I mean, if a particular corner thrives playing against size but struggles with speed, the Browns can make that switch, or vice versa, and they can do that throughout the game. And the way they can run routes with DPJ and Moore can complement each other. So, look, it's all about, again, growing the pie. Everybody will be disappointed if Deshaun Watson is not throwing for at least 4,000 yards this year. They got to go somewhere. So, DPJ can obviously take up a good chunk of those. Everything has come out since Watson has been here is that he loves DPJ. Moore is just another weapon and if the Browns are successful doing what they'd like to do and create space, Moore is a guy who can take advantage of it and create with the ball in his hands. It's a good situation for them to be in, gives them lots of options, and then you see where the play takes you. I mean, Kevin Stefanski is the Bruce Lee style of coaching. It's always flow like water. He's not going to force things into situations he doesn't have to. He's going to take what the defense gives them. If in a given week, DPJ is constantly going to be open and in a position to make plays, DPJ is going to be featured. If Moore is that guy, he's going to be featured. And then obviously Cooper is consistently in that realm. So it's just more ways to attack opponents, cause problems, and to let Kevin Stefanski do what he likes to do best anyway.
Pete, if we're talking about this three, and look, some of this obviously comes down to weather related, as far as, the way the schedule breaks. And, the Browns obviously had some rough luck with that towards the end of last season here. But what is the realistic, output between the three of these? I mean, you got to figure 200, 200 receptions, 2,500 yards. DPJ, if Coop had 9, I mean, is, let's say, a little bit north of 200, a little bit north of 2,500, north of 20 touchdowns. Is that the realistic goal here between these three playing with Deshaun Watson? It could certainly go higher. It certainly could. But there is a hell of a group here. And, you try to find some wide receiver threesomes from back in the day. You compare them to, I won't say, definitely not comparing him to the Rams in the day where it was, Ike Bruce, Torrey Holt, and Akeem, but it's got a little bit of that type of feel. There's like some legit expectations of what this group can do. Obviously, if Deshaun Watson can play the way we all think he is still capable of playing, but the amount of, production that these three could put up, I don't know what exactly the true numbers would be and say, that's a safe goal.
Well, I'm glad you restrained yourself and didn't compare this group to a receiver core that had 2 Hall of Famers in it. But look, 220, I don't know. It's really hard to guess with receptions because so much of that is determined by efficiency and what you're able to do. But 2,500 sounds about in the neighborhood. I think they would like to get more than that, obviously.
Figure Coop, we know 1,000, 750 a piece for the other two.
Right? Like
Coop
if
for 11, range, break up the rest.
I think you're pretty satisfied. Although, like we said, I think anything short of 4,000 on the season is going to be disappointing for Deshaun Watson,
unless they're 13-4,
right? And then you obviously got to throw David Njoku in there and some in there at points, and you've got guys like Jordan Akins and some of these other receivers that can contribute.
Running backs get involved, the other wide receivers, et cetera, et cetera. Yes.
So I think 2,500 is probably a good goal to shoot for, and then anything beyond that, you're pretty happy with it. But that also means these guys stayed healthy. That also means if we're talking about that, then chances are the offense was successful and they're scoring points. So that's certainly a valuable part of it. But yeah, it's all about options. Like the fact that you can talk about 2,500 yards potentially between these three guys, and we're not talking about David Njoku or Nick Chubb, means you are doing pretty well for your offense. And that's highlights just what the Browns have looked to do to put Watson in position to succeed. I mean, like we talk about like this element, there's no excuses for the Browns not to make the playoffs, whatever. But I do think it's fair to say there's no excuses not for Watson not to be successful given the way this offense is structured. There's other things that could go wrong, and you'd be like, oh, okay, I get it. Like if Watson's, tore up his knee again. But just in terms of if these guys are healthy and all these things are functioning, it's going to be really difficult for Watson not to succeed, and for these guys not to put up some numbers.
I mean, it's all there in front of them. And, credit to obviously Andrew Berry and all the staff of, trying to, basically hedge down on the bet you made with Deshaun Watson and giving him all this money. In order to make something succeed, you cultivate it, you feed it, you do everything you can. And it looks like, to this point, they have done that. We're going to continue here with some wide receiver talk and try to figure out maybe the way this room works out. Maybe we have an idea of the way it'll be for week 1. But could that change going further? So Jeff Lloyd, Pete Smith, your latest Locked On Browns. To all the everydayers who make Locked On Browns their first listen. Again, you guys are the fabric on which the show is built, obviously. Thank you guys immensely. Here to all the new folks who've been coming in, whether it's been draft season, whether it's the Za'Darius Smith trade. Well, be more like the everydayers. Subscribe to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Notifications on, so when the content drops, you guys are there to consume it. And audio-wise, Locked On Browns, always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. Pete, you look at this now, and I think we both agree we know who wild cards and way well all plays out here, going afterwards. Cedric Tillman, 3rd round pick. David Bell, 3rd round pick from the year before. You got to think, obviously, those guys probably have every opportunity here. For them, it's a don't screw it up, and you're going to make it to week 1 against the Cincinnati Bengals. Marquise Goodwin, it's a difficult one because this is going to be a guy where, it'll be, practice reps, probably won't practice all the time over the summer. Maybe a guy that, because if you're not within the top 3, the limited reps that a Deshaun Watson gets in the preseason, Marquise Goodwin is probably not going to see those reps. So then you get to whether or not he's going to play with Dobbs, whether he's going to play with DTR. And by the way, the NFL passed the rule today. You will now be able to dress 3 quarterbacks each and every week in the NFL. That is one that I like that the NFL did do. But the rest of this room, Pete, and, you have, obviously, the move for Goodwin. You made the move last year for a guy like Jakarian Grant. But it's a really tough spot here because you know what your top 3 is. The Browns ideally know what they want in number 4. They ideally know what they want in number 5. And the rest of it, it's going to be, it could be a wow factor because there are some issues here that could come up as far as, oh, well, we have to carry an extra one of these because so-and-so is hurt, or we have to go here because it becomes difficult that way. But we know who the 5 are. Ideally, most teams like to keep 6. But it's interesting. And, for Cedric Tillman, looks like he's going to get very much an extended look here to see how far along and how ready he is to be a contributor here. David Bell definitely brings a vibe here that, he's kind of like Amari Cooper, that he will run the route exactly the way you tell him to, but he may not have the physical attributes as some of the other guys he's competing with.
Okay, so.
Oh, sit down, kids. Pull up a chair.
Amari Cooper is still coming back from his core muscle injury.
Yes.
He had the surgery, obviously, and they, a month ago, they made it sound like he's probably not doing any OTAs, and I wouldn't expect him to do anything at minicamp either. So he's looking at training camp. So that should give Cedric Tillman some opportunities if he's indeed that sort of next X. But the way I sort of look at this thing right now is you've got your top 3 dudes, and then Cedric Tillman is the first outside guy in, and then David Bell is your first inside guy in. And David Bell is better than some people would like to believe. He was in 44% of offensive snaps last year and was open a lot more than people think he was based on data and all that stuff. He started Jacoby Brissett was very slow to trust his receivers, and it took him a while to get DPJ to trust with that. So by the end of the Brissett run, you started seeing more and more of David Bell, and then David Bell broke his thumb, and Watson was in there, and you sort of lost a little bit of that momentum. But I would caution people to be like, "Oh, David Bell stunk as rookie." He did some things that were pretty good. So those are your 5 right now. But because of things like of Amari Cooper and some of these things, you're going to have opportunities to get some more of these guys some reps. Marquise Goodwin, obviously, you know what he is. He's a burner. You're going to put him on the field. He's going to run real far, real fast. And you're going to throw the ball real far, real fast and see if he can go get it. So, and he's not guaranteed anything. Like if the Browns cut him, he makes like $400,000. So it's not, would they probably like to keep him? Sure. But there's a whole bunch of guys behind them that could be interesting. Jakeem Grant obviously has a special teams niche that he could fill, in addition to doing some things on offense. I mean, they wanted to do things with him offensively last year before he got hurt with the Achilles, being sort of that jet player and just being able to get the ball to him with room to run. And people would immediately, say Anthony Schwartz has no shot. I would certainly say that he's on the outside looking in, but I wouldn't rule him out. And for the reasons I talked about with Goodwin, he's not guaranteed anything. And obviously Schwartz has a lot to improve upon offensively. But the big thing that Schwartz does that can help him, and will get him a job somewhere, whether it's in Cleveland or not, he will be on a roster playing football despite everything, is because he's really good at special teams. And he was a factor in that. I mean, look, for all you want to say about Anthony Schwartz, he helped win the Browns a football game last year against the Tampa Bay Bucks between scoring a touchdown on a reverse, setting up a drive, and then special teams play that sort of set up the game-winning drive. Like, he can do those things. So if he got better, or if he's getting better as a receiver, like, he's a bigger factor than you think he is. And then you've got some other guys in there, that were on the team last year. Dalen Baldwin, who's, seems to be like the new, can't think of his name, the guy who's just going to end up on the practice squad every year, be nice in preseason, and be that next 200-pound guy up. He's going to, I think he's going to continue in that role. There's some other guys that are just sort of interesting in that realm that probably aren't big threats. Jalen Darden is still, look, he's another one. Like, you didn't see him, so you don't really know what he is, but he's a former 5th-round pick with a ton of speed who can play special teams a little bit. They've got all these sort of scratch-off type players that could be something for somebody, or potentially a trade for a player type thing. But they've got, I haven't
exactly for the spots they're looking to find the final pieces for. It's like, all right, well, it's going to be him versus him. It's going to be him versus him. And like, everybody kind of says, there's several guys here who have several resume who understand that basically they're going to end up competing against so-and-so for their life in Cleveland, even if it is a practice squad shot.
Right. And look, I mean, they're obviously, everybody on that wide receiver group is super young, other than Amari Cooper and Marquise Goodwin. They're going to get their share of days off once they've gotten them comfortable with the chemistry between them and Deshaun Watson. So it's going to give some of these guys opportunities to prove themselves, and they're going to play. Obviously, all those guys are going to play a ton in the preseason. So there will be a plenty for them to audition for the Browns as well as other teams. And who knows, maybe the Browns can flip somebody and help. And then, the other part of that is, can you get a guy like Jakeem Grant to your practice squad? Because if you can somehow, that's a hell of a get. That's a nice weapon that you just have there as somebody who can come in and do kick return and punt return and do some occasional offensive stuff. So it's a good situation to be in. But this is sort of the challenge with it, is when you know who 5 guys are, everybody else is almost hoping somebody gets hurt, even if they're not really thinking that, because that's their best chance to get a job.
And these guys will get extended looks. And, it's always difficult when you're in camp with one team, and, you have to understand the fact that I'm trying to basically play my way out of here because the opportunity for me is not here. But look, it's taken a while to get here. And we've talked about this for years, but eventually, you get to the point where you want to be the team that guys can't make, as opposed to what we've talked about for years covering the show here on Locked On Browns is, all right, well, it's final cut down weekend. Let's go shopping and see if we can find a starting linebacker, perhaps a third safety, maybe a nickel corner, a fourth wide receiver. This roster is one that is very, very difficult to make now. There are a lot of people here, and just getting from 90 to 70 is going to be one thing. Getting from 70 to 53 is going to be a whole other thing. So we've done this so far this week. Series this week is obviously going to be the top 5 most important Cleveland Browns for overall success in 2023. Yesterday, we got to Dalvin Tomlinson. Today, we got to Amari Cooper. You everydayers know, because you are here every day, locked in, subscribe to Locked On Browns on the YouTube page. Of course, your notifications on, so when the content drops, our guys are there. And audio-wise, wherever you get your podcast, Locked On Browns is always available and always free. He is Pete Smith at _Pete Smith _ Browns Digest, SportsIllustrated.com. Cannot say enough nice things about the work Pete and his team do over there. Content, tons of it every single day. Continue to dominate the game. Make sure Browns Digest, SportsIllustrated.com is part of the daily repertoire. Myself, Jeff Lloyd, at Jeff _LJ _Lloyd. The show at Locked On Browns. Again, we appreciate all of you who make Locked On Browns your first listen. Again, we're starting here. We're going to do a five episode series this week. 5 most influential Browns for 2023. Dalvin Tomlinson, number 5. Amari Cooper, number 4. Stick around and see the way the rest of this unfolds. Until the next time, this has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on the LOB. Let's go, Browns.